Good morning, everyone, and welcome as Me presents Transracial Adoption and Fostering. We're so happy to have you here today. My name is Stephanie Franklin, and I'm going to talk about two me's this morning. So there's me, Stephanie Franklin. I'm a Senior Vice President here at UCAN, and I'm also the executive sponsor for the Me Employee Resource Group. And then there is me, our multi-ethnic employee resource group, and we are hosting this presentation today in virtual conversations. So we're so happy to have you. Please take a moment and say hi to each other in the chat. Feel free to use the chat today. I'm a chatter. I like to use it a lot just to say, hey, how you doing? Not a lot of sunshine out today, but we're going to bring the sunshine with this conversation. And we're also going to deepen our understanding of transracial adoption and fostering with our wonderful panel that we have for you today. So I wanted to begin with talking a little bit about our employee resource group and what we do in Me. We have a lot of conversations regarding multi-ethnicity and the layers of multi-ethnicity and how that impacts individuals, families, our staff here, our young people. Adriana, who is our moderator today, she leads us through a lot of mini table talks, right? So we have a lot of red table talks. We give them a run for their money, and we talk about multi-ethnicity and all its multiple layers. And that's what our conversation is going to center on today. Adriana, again, she's our co-chair of the Me Employee Resource Group, and she's also a coordinator for the Dearmeyer Future Leaders Now program here at UCAN, and she's formerly of our Violence Intervention and Prevention Department. So she has a wide range of experiences, and she supports young people in their growth and development. And I'd like to welcome her as our moderator for this morning. So enjoy. Thank you, Adriana.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that introduction. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on this gloomy Wednesday. But like Stephanie said, we're going to bring in the sunshine. So without further ado, as Stephanie mentioned, this is our conversation about transracial adoption and fostering. So I want to bring on our panelists. Our first panelist is Frances Cunningham. She is a senior consultant at Optum. Our next panelist is Katie Kanjimi, who is our senior program officer of community investment of Blue Cross Blue Shield. And our last panelist, who is no stranger to UCAN, or maybe he is our very own Zach Schrantz, who is our senior advisor here at UCAN. So thank you all for being on here. Before we jump into the 30-second elevator pitch, I have an icebreaker question. Zach, you already know this question because I asked it last week. But last week we celebrated the life of Prince, who left us 5 years ago. So with that, and for the people in the chat, what is your favorite Prince song? That'll be our icebreaker for the day. Katie, I saw the oh wow in your face. You're like, oh wow. So I'll kick it off. It's Diamonds and Pearls for me.
Purple Rain for me.
I would have to say When Doves Cry.
Nice.
Ditto what Frances just said, When Doves Cry. That's a hard question on the spot. There are so many.
I know.
You stumped us already, Adriana.
You're like, this is not off to a good start. All right, so very quickly, if you could just very briefly tell us, just take 30 seconds to tell us who you are, just very quickly, and then obviously we'll get into more of the nitty gritty later. So we'll start with Frances. If you could give us your 30-second elevator pitch. And I see your comments in the chat. When doves cry, I will die for you. I see them.
Yes. Well, happy to be here, everyone. Good morning. That was really hard. I was raised in Minneapolis, so that was, I had to think about that. But yes, my name is Frances. I am living in Nashville currently. I did live in Chicago for 8 years, attended DePaul and worked at United Way, so stayed around and just fell in love with the city. I am here today because I am an adoptee. I was adopted at 1 from India, East India, so kind of closer to Nepal area. And I just truly believe in talking about adoption, about fostering, It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, that's been a part of my narrative forever, but might not be so familiar to others. So I'm excited to jump in and answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll go Katie.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. I live in Chicago. This is now home. I'm a Midwesterner at heart, but didn't grow up here. I'm smart enough to know that either you're born and raised in Chicago or Chicago is your home. Chicago is my home, but I wasn't born and raised. Grew up outside of Cincinnati. The grand plan was not to be in Chicago forever. After graduating from college, I moved to San Francisco. I came to Chicago for graduate school, and I was only supposed to be here for 2 years. But plans changed and I got rooted. And part of my rooting here was in this incredible blessing of becoming a foster parent. It wasn't necessarily a path that I expected or anticipated, but it truly changed my life. And it's part of why I'm still here in Chicago. And it's part of why I love this city so much. So really happy to be here. Fostering and adoption is something that is, as Frances said, very near and dear to my heart. I talk about it as much as I can, though I have to be honest, this is probably my first public platform, semi-public platform discussing my experience. So I'm an open book. Anything that folks want to ask, I'm happy to answer, and just really humbled by the invitation. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mr. Zach.
All right, and Katie and Frances, thank you so much for joining us. This has been the Me Affinity group, or employee resource group, I guess is what we're supposed to call them now, has been a group that I've been an active part of for more than 10 years. I've been with UCAN for 30 years and started as a caseworker in foster care. And we'll talk a little bit later on about how that led to my involvement with me. But then I am now a foster and adoptive parent of Dorian, who is now 17 and a half, and he came to live with us when he was 6 and a half. So it has been a journey, and a journey that we have been, certainly open to sharing with you all this morning. And it's a journey that has been supported by so many people at UCAN that I'm always grateful for. The Me group of people that are always checking in, supporting, challenging, asking, and then also our Alumni Involvement Council, who likewise has always been there for us. And so I think one of the themes that we'll talk about as we move into this is the importance of having a strong support network. And I just have been incredibly blessed, both personally and professionally, to have a great support network.
Awesome. Thank you. So with that, we'll just jump right into it. Frances, can you share with us your adoption story? And then we'll go Katie and Zach.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned before, I am adopted from India. I was adopted early on in my life at about 1 year old, maybe a little bit older than that, but brought to the orphanage pretty quickly after I was born. So I spent that first year in the orphanage in India. I kind of have a different layer to this where I have same-sex parents. So I have lesbian mothers, and was kind of the first generation to go through what it's like to be a daughter or a person with same-sex parents. It wasn't at that time, and I was born in '87, it wasn't legal for same-sex parents to adopt somebody. Actually, I have a younger sister as well who's adopted from India, not biological, but by the time she was adopted a couple of years later, my parents were able to adopt her together. So that just kind of shows how the evolution has changed. Obviously, right now it's more mainstream. I think we're probably going to get into topics like that later. But was raised in Minneapolis, and really, my parents did an amazing job of putting me, my sister, in anything related to culture, not just mine, but different cultures. But they really did focus in on the Indian culture, especially when we were small, and we ended up growing up to doing things culturally that really impacted us and made us feel like we still knew who we were. For example, I was a part of Indian dance called Kathak since I was 4, and did that until I went to DePaul. So until I went to Chicago and moved to Chicago, and actually did it there for a while too. So that's just an example of how they made sure that the dots were connected to me culturally, and they knew that they couldn't provide information to me that had to do with Indian culture. So I was able to be a part of that, and also be surrounded by different groups of people who were international adoptees, adoptees of color, and also adoptees who had same-sex parents. So we were a part of a gay and lesbian group that we met with for a certain amount of time every week. And the kids played and talked, and the parents also socialized and really got a lot of best practices. So totally rare. It's not common, especially in the early 90s, but it definitely changed my approach and thoughts to adoption, and really made me solidify who I was with my own identity, which often can be lost when you're going through the adoption process, or are an adoptee, or might be a foster person. So
becoming a foster parent wasn't necessarily something that I planned, and not because I just hadn't considered it. So it wasn't anything that I didn't have a feeling one way or another about it. But early in my professional career, I worked as a mental health professional. I know being at UCAN, you all will understand this, where I worked as a mental health professional in a residential home for children. And the children at this particular facility on the floor that I worked were between the ages of 8 and 13. The facility had little guys, even younger than that, but all in all, kids aged out around 13 and either went to group homes or stepped down to foster care. Another thing I think the UCAN family will understand is that while working in residential, I was assigned, as all staff were, a primary, and that's what we call them, primaries, where you had at least one child on the floor, maybe more, where you just spent more time with, some birthdays, you were the go-to on homework, or if there were things going on. And after my introduction or my probationary training period, I was assigned a primary named Albert. And long story short, he was 11 when I met him. He aged out of that facility at 13. And what I said to him, I was actually no longer working there full time, but I was still volunteering. I was still really connected to the kids and the staff and just the work itself. And I said, hey, buddy, I get it. If when you walk out of these doors, if you want to leave it and everyone behind, that's cool. But if you want to stay in touch, kind of like a big brother, big sister kind of thing, I would love to do that too. About a month later, he called me up and was like, hey, do you want to go for pizza? And so we reconnected and began sort of the second phase of our relationship. We were very close by that time. Several months later, he faced another challenge in his life, and he was this one was a health challenge, and he was diagnosed with cancer. And at that time, he didn't have a close connection with his foster parent. And the way I can describe it is that his illness was severe enough to where the treatment required him to be inpatient. And so that was an inpatient stint that would be between, a Friday afternoon and a Monday discharge. And it just didn't really settle with me that he would be sitting in there alone. So I just started going. And that was a summer of a couple surgeries, multiple cancer chemo weekends. And that meant that we were playing I Spy in the hospital room, watching Scooby movies and drinking slushies or whatever it is that he could tolerate. And for anyone who's been through health issues, the way I describe it is when death is in the room, the people who are there become family. And that was when Albert and I became family. I was no longer the one who just showed up for pizza, and he was no longer the kid that I just took out for pizza. We were connected in a way that was really brought to us by way of this significant health issue. Fast forward, a couple more foster placements didn't work out. And on one cold January night, it was a Saturday night, when the last foster placement shut its doors, I picked him up. And by that Monday morning, we were having an emergency meeting for me to become a licensed foster parent. So it wasn't, again, not necessarily a path that I necessarily planned for, but when I look back on all of it, from the beginning of the day that I met Albert, I see that it was a path that was meant to be. And so I'm very grateful for it. And I had the honor and the privilege of being his foster parent until he aged out of the system at 21. But I didn't even really think of myself as a foster parent at that point in time. I was just, he just called me his godmother, and we were family.
So our path was a little bit longer and slower than Katie's, it sounds like. Though in many ways, so when I moved to Chicago and made Chicago my home in 1990, started at UCAN as a foster care worker. Then a few years later, to become wife, moved to Chicago as well. And I started at UCAN in foster care. She started working at Catholic Charities in foster care. So that was kind of, our introduction to this work. And as we got more involved, we just recognized the incredible importance and value of foster parenting, and that we knew, or we said at the time, that we were going to become foster parents, and that was 1990, and then 1995, and then 2000, and you can see it's probably took almost 20 years until we finally made the decision to become foster parents. And I think I think there was a couple things. So one, my wife had been professional in child welfare for 10 plus years. When our oldest daughter was born, or actually my middle son was born, she took time off of work, and so was home and helped raise our children. And then she started getting active and involved in volunteering at a local group home near us. Started to get attached to the young people, maybe similar, Katie, to your experience. And then I don't know if you remember or not, but I think it was 11 or 12 years ago, there was major earthquakes in Haiti. And at that time, the Illinois child welfare system was kind of gearing up. We might have to take in take in a lot of Haitian refugees and children, and will people be ready? And that ended up not happening, or not needing to happen. But I think after that, Lisa called me up one day and said, I want to sign us up for foster parent classes. And she's like, there's so many kids here in Illinois and in Chicago, as we know, that need homes, and that we should, we don't need to, wait for an external situation to come up. We should do that. And so we did. And, foster parent classes are, it's a 6 or 8 month process. So it takes some time, which I think is good. It's kind of like the time during pregnancy where you're starting to prepare for what's going to be coming. Though I think the reality is very different. You don't really know what you're getting into until you get into it. And so that's our story.
Thank you to Adriana, and thank you to our panelists, Francis, Katie, and Zach, for peeling back the curtain and really sharing some deep personal experiences. And we hope that all of you in the audience have taken something from this. If you are considering adoption, if you are adopted, we thank you for tuning in with us and sharing. Before I go on, my favorite Prince song is I Will Die For You. So we wanted to get that out of the way. Time is running out. So if you are here, you want room there is always room at the Me table. So we meet on the fourth Thursday of every month at 3:30. You can reach myself or Adriana or Bianca for information on how to join that table. Even if you don't watch This Is Us, you are still welcome at the Me table. These are the type of discussions we have every month. and they are rich discussions, and we always learning something. So thank you to all of you for coming out. I know it's about lunchtime, so I will turn this over to Bianca, but thank you once again, and we hope to see you at our future diversity and equity and inclusion events. Thank you all so much.